All right, welcome to Wednesday. Zoe Levine, the movement. We're getting down to our last few of the year. And so, what I really want to focus on until you send me more questions for next week, if you need, I know it's a busy time of year. Maybe they have to do with the holidays. I don't know. Maybe there's some questions around that. Meanwhile, I want to focus a little bit on. I was talking to Laura about sometimes as we pick up new things and new habits, some others drop away. And that's fine. And it's totally normal. We can only handle so much in our kind of frontal space, kind of front of mind as possible. So let's just review. Let's kind of we'll review without music a little bit of the habits that we started out covering, and see if there's any of them that have kind of slipped off your radar and out of your habits, and see if we can kind of put them back into the forefront. It's really easy to do. It's just kind of jogging your memory. So let's just start with a little check-in, right? So this idea of checking in to see how your body's feeling, it might be a new one to you as of this year. It's super helpful for understanding what is most useful for you, um, in terms of what's making the biggest change, right? Who cares unless we're making a major change? Who cares about what we're doing, all these little habits, unless they're going to make a difference? So we'll just sit for a moment and find your breath. So you could close your eyes and just check in. How are things feeling? What's your stress level? How is your mind kind of chattering and feeling like I don't have time for this? Um, that happens to me a lot when I'm doing things on my own, when someone else is not holding the space for me. So it's normal. And then just notice where your breath easily goes. Is it easy to kind of drop into a slower, deeper breath? Is that feeling a little hard because there's not much room for it, right? Sometimes physically it doesn't feel like we have space for a larger, slower breath. So just notice where your breath tends to go, what moves, what doesn't move. Notice how easy it feels to sit tall on your sits bones. We've done a lot of work to make that space more easeful. That doesn't mean you're going to be there at all times. It just means you have the tools to get there, and that's going to create a more easeful stack, which is less work or pain or compensation in your hip flexors, in your low back, in your neck and shoulders. Notice how easy or hard it is to sit on your sits bones. Notice your shoulder blades. Are they or not just shoulder blades, your shoulders and neck? Does it feel like you're holding some tension there, or do they feel like they're just draping easily over your rib cage? Just kind of notice. Good. And from here, just slowing down the breath. Breath is one of the things that we talk about, and I'll kind of reintroduce two ideas about your breath here, and that's all. One is that idea of letting your breath slow down and kind of get lower down into your pelvis, not only in your pelvis, but finding that three-dimensional breath that is front to back, it's side to side through your ribs, under your armpits, through the side waist, and it's top to bottom, that kind of breath really low. And then the one thing that I would add as something to think about always, whether you're sitting or standing, and not always, but thinking about occasionally is a better word, that space kind of in the low ribs in the back, your kidney area, right? Your kidneys kind of tuck in right around your low ribs. And you can put your hands there if you want. But that space, just a reminder that breathing into that space, kind of breathing backwards into that space or wide into that space, as if you could inflate your kidneys. That as a breath connection will help make sure you're not popping your front ribs up and crunching into your low back all the time. So if you're standing, if you're sitting, could you take a second to breathe it back into the kidney space? And that's a big deal. So just that is kind of a habit, breath, being aware of your breath in any way, shape, or form. Good. Another habit, we're going to go ahead and stand up because the standing assessment is useful here. And we'll make sure you have something, whatever you use for your calf stretch, whether it's a rolled up towel or blankets. These half rollers are really useful for that. But stand before you even do the calf stretch, quick assessment. And I'm going to cut my head off so you can see my foot better anyway. But quick assessment, just standing on your own 2 feet. Do you stand, do you grip your thighs and kind of lift up your kneecaps in order to stand here? Do you sit on your hamstrings? Do you feel like you're sitting somewhere or your butt squeezing together? Or we talked about the bottom part of your butt kind of touching your hamstrings, right? So notice if any of those things are happening naturally, right? And then just know that we're heading toward relaxed thighs, a butt that's actually behind you, sits bones that are kind of more open rather than scooching forward. So you have some freedom back behind you. So notice there, and then go ahead and let's do our calf stretch, right? So this is one of the major simple habits and foundation for everything else in standing. It's just front of your foot on an object or a blanket, something that's tall enough that you can keep your heel on the floor and kind of inch your other foot forward. And eventually you feel like it's decent, right? It doesn't feel like it's too much of a pull. You can kind of stand and be supported. Change the angle a little bit. Right, and we talk about ideally, and some of you may have noticed a shift this year. If this has brought itself into your life, you may have noticed you started out with your feet side by side, and that was a huge stretch. And maybe now you're back to kind of that more ideal one foot kind of all the way in front of the object without having to kind of put your hips in a weird place in order to do that. Just kind of standing on both feet upright, vertical, without pressing hips forward or backward, right? So if you notice a difference with that, that is huge. It changes literally everything about your gait for the better and about the way you stand for the better, taking pressure off of those compensation patterns, allowing for a more efficient gait, walking pattern, which can affect everything all the way up to how your neck is feeling. Great, so just a reminder how big of a deal this can be. Go ahead and come off of that, stand on your own 2 feet and just get a feel for how different that one leg feels than the other. It might be easier to feel almost like a backing up of that hip and a stacking of your bones, right? We talk about stacking of bones on that side that has just been opened up, right? If you bend your knees, do you feel how one calf has more space than the other? Try the same thing on the other side. This is a kind of different experience for me. You might have one side that's a lot more tight than the other. For me, it's some nerve stuff. It's not even fascia. It's getting better like that. You can almost step forward. Still a bit tight. Right, so hanging out here. Again, if you've dropped this out of your regular routine, this could be part of what we've talked about, setting up a playground for your feet. If you have some times during the day when you're standing, whether it's a standing desk, whether it's I'm on phone calls sometimes and can be standing and it doesn't matter, whether it's, I don't know, there's so many other things. It's just taking a break in the day from sitting to get to stand and have a little playground for your feet. We talked about including something like this, where you can just stand on it and you don't have to think about the amount of time. Right? It's just a decent amount of time. You might feel kind of getting used to this position, right? If you stay there long enough, that's a great amount of time. You may not have that long, right? You may end up finding a new position by stepping forward and it's a bigger pull. It can be anything, right? Doing a little bit is better than nothing. So it doesn't really matter how much time you hang out here. If you're doing an activity and you're on your computer and it's a playground, maybe you end up standing a little bit longer at an easier position, right, where it's not as stretchy. So many options to make it easy for you to just get in there and do. Go ahead and get rid of that half dome, stand on your own 2 feet. The other piece, I'm just grabbing my ball. Am I? Yes, I am. I'm grabbing a soft ball, and just a reminder of the easiest piece of this movement vitamin that we call foot texture. So you can stand on the ball. We're just going to kind of step on the ball in various places. You have the whole foot treatment, right? It's a thing. You have the whole foot treatment. But for this, we're trying to kind of just think of the movement vitamins that you might want to bring forward, right? And just stepping on the ball all over. Doesn't matter. You can do the full foot treatment. It can be very fancy when you have a lot of time. This can also be part of that foot playground that you set up for yourself somewhere, right? Because it's the things that are already set up for you that you're going to do more easily. You don't have to think about it, right? So if you're doing any thinking right now towards the end of this time you have together, it should be more in terms of setup. how to make it easy for you to just, it's an easy yes. You don't have to think about it. It's already set up while you're brushing your teeth at your standing desk. Try the other foot just so we get that in there. Just stepping all over, not even worrying about rinsing and shearing and all that other stuff we do with the foot treatment. Bare minimum, this is an important vitamin, right? We talk about your feet, 1/4 of your joints are in your feet. You don't use them, they kind of fall asleep on you. And this is the foundation for literally everything else in your body when we are standing. If you are a standing being and do use legs, just the foundation for everything, right? So just texture, waking things up, making sure your bones and joints are awake and aware and able to do their job to support the rest of your body, right? Okay, so those are two big things. We also talked about the idea of a squat as a movement vitamin, which I'll kind of combine opening up the pelvis, right, as part of that. So some of the easiest ways you talked about opening up, it's the sits bones away from your hamstrings, right? We get locked down in here all the time from sitting like that in chairs, right? Sometimes we sit like that in chairs. You feel, just try it, you feel your butt like locks to your hamstrings. So everything that we do movement vitamin wise is trying to get your butt off of your sits bones to free your butt, freedom for your butt. So there's lots of ways that we started that. One of them was just that simple kind of hanging out with your tail open. Forearms could be on desk. You could make a long reach if you also want that side body work. And just free play, straight legs with open tail, shifting side to side. And again, this could be like a thinking break moment. If we talked about when you're out in the field, if you were pretty sure no one was looking and you were around your car, this is my favorite road trip things, like at the gas station, to unwind from sitting, to just hang out on the car hood or the side of the car, maybe away from where people might see you if you're worried about that sort of thing. Although I would like to live in a world where we're all comfortable with stretching and being comfortable and taking care of our bodies. So if you want to start that revolution, feel free to join me in not caring what other people think. But I know that's challenging. So, right, there's so many ways, right? You've got you're practicing into the squat is next, but this is the start of the squat, that opening up the sits bones. Your feet could be together, they could be far apart. You could be brainstorming, you could be reading something on your desk or computer. You probably have other ideas of what you could be doing. And then you can turn this into our movement vitamin of a squat, which is really just any time, I'll tell you a full squat, anytime you get down this deep, which is not accessible to everyone. Although if you've been working on this stuff, you might be closer to this than you think, right? So this idea of just your body in this position, you could be lying on your back in this position, you could be kind of hinting at it up more upright, right? So finding a squat, that shape, right? That deep fold, that open sits bones. It's all finding the shape if you can't get all the way low. We practice finding the shape with one foot on a chair, right? Just looking for that shape. If you're feeling a little tight, looking for the shape of the squat in any way, right? It's just a vitamin you're looking for. So adding the squat in. Another piece, another movement vitamin was hanging. You remember that one? That's one that's easy to drop out. It's so funny. I have an actual, let's see if I can get this into the screen. Oh, barely. Nice, that's what you slippery. Anyway, I have an actual gymnastics bar for my daughter. Got someone on top of it. So I'll kind of be on the side. I can play, there's too many things here, but I can play with hanging on this bar here, or the thing of combining with, most people won't have that, right? The idea of combining a hang on a railing in a house, stairs, railing, outside, inside, a door frame might work, but the idea of hanging into a squat like this, right? Right, good. And then coming back up. So that's a thing that you can look for as well. And combining the idea of hanging with a squat. If you're not squatting, remember we talked about a million different forms of hanging. To find space for your shoulders, right? You could hang sideways from a door. You could do this around your car, kind of pulling with the door open. Get a little pull here, even with straight legs. The idea of hanging your shoulders, right? Pulling on something. You could kind of try to do it with your edge of your desk. Sinks are great for hanging. Good. So sinks are great for hanging. It's a movement vitamin. Try to find somewhere that works for you. Uneven, not hanging your, notice my body weight's not off the ground. If you get to a playground and you can hang fully, great. The top of a door jamb, like a little wood above a door in your house, if you can get your fingertips up there and just like let your weight hang down, shoulders away from your ears. That's also a way to get that movement vitamin of hanging, which becomes really important for grip. There's so many studies out there these days that are talking about how our loss of grip strength is messing with everything else in the neck and shoulders. It's not great, not good for the healthy neck and shoulders, but finding that hanging is going to help support your shoulders. Your ribs are going to be in a better place. Your breath will have more space, and your neck is going to be a little bit more easeful. Okay. So those are, and getting outside and walking, all of the things that you've been learning, all of the changes that you're making in your body, when you take them on a walk, you reiterate all the good patterns that you're using. Getting outside is a movement vitamin that is necessary for life in general. Even when it's cold, just bundle up. And doing some of these movement vitamins consistently will change the way you walk, and then walking will reiterate those patterns, and everything will start to be different and amazing. So kind of ask yourself, are there any of those major key factors, those key movement vitamins that have fallen off track a little bit? Are there places where you can take a little moment right now, right after we stop this, take 2 minutes to kind of think, where can I make things easier? If there's something that's fallen off track, could I set something up? Could I set a situation up? Could I write a post-it on by the door jamb, to do a little hang when I walk by my closet? And that, could I set my ball by my toothbrush, like in a cup on the sink by my toothbrush? Could I set up a playground at the office, or where I'm most likely to have more time standing, where I could be barefoot or in socks and play with my feet a little bit more? Are there, squats are a little bit harder for finding like a key place, but maybe it's somewhere where you can kind of hang into a squat and get hanging in a squat. The sink, maybe there's a post-it by the sink somewhere where you feel comfortable just having a little hang squat moment. You can go up and down, you could just do it once. But could you take just 2 minutes and kind of sprinkle some, it's not the movement items themselves, it's the how you're going to do it, the visual cue for, oh, when I walk by this, or when I'm in this, I have this thing that I'm going to do. So that's what I would highly recommend to kind of wrap this year up with a bow, is to start planting those seeds. All right. So next week, or whenever I see you next, feel free to let me know some of the most useful kind of tricks that you figured out to set up some of these movement vitamins that may have fallen off track. All right. And that's it for today. Nice work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura. All right, we'll see you next week for our last one of the year.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.